Hello and welcome to Platforming Community Live. I'm Jacob.
Hey, I'm Pete.
How you doing, Pete?
I'm good.
Bit of a different intro. That one. That was more of a formal, dramatic intro, whereas usually it's just a "Hey, Pete. Hey, Jacob." Anyway,
how's your day going?
Yeah, good. Working out new user flows and things today, which is fun for a few clients. So always taking me back to our conversation on onboarding.
Nice.
From before, but good to be back again and chatting. I mean, this week, as you mentioned last week, last time we take it in turns of who's going to be bringing across the topic today, You're going to be talking to us about building your marketplace, right, and all around Stripe. So tell me about that. Let's kick that off. Dive in.
Cool. Yes, absolutely. So we've got experience building a few marketplaces. We use Stripe on a lot of our platforms. We've used Stripe for years. And I thought it'd be worth just explaining what Stripe is, what Stripe Connect is, how that can help with building out a marketplace, building out a community, and so on. So let's start with Stripe. If you've made a payment online, it's very likely at some point it's gone through Stripe. In fact, they released a report this year, and I shared it with you when it came out, that they did $1 trillion in transactions in 2023, which was 1% of all money spent on the world, which is not normal.
That is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
So Stripe is essentially a Irish company, which was funded via Y Combinator in an early kind of seed round, and they grew and grew and grew, and now they have a range of products. So their kind of most simplest product is you can create a payment link, or you can create an invoice, and you can send it to someone. They can hit pay, and they can type in their credit card details, and they'll send you the money. The most complex product would go all the way through to kind of low-level banking, where you can actually basically go up to everything just before running a bank, where you can issue debit cards, you can people can have accounts, and so on and so on. They kind of got everything in between. Most people, if they're using Stripe, would be using it as part of Shopify or as part of kind of a commerce platform. And that would be that they essentially charge somebody for a product, and in return, they receive money. Very simple transaction. But what we're talking about today is Stripe Connect. So how much do you know about Stripe Connect, Jacob?
Well, I know a little bit. It's obviously from Andre, our technical lead, who is a wizard in Stripe. I mean, we've been working with Stripe, as you said, for so long. So you pick up things from a design perspective here and there, and trying to understand things from client communications. But in general, I think it'll be great to really understand. First of all, why have we chosen to recommend Stripe to our clients when it comes to integrating payment processing? I think will be a great place to start, and then I'm keen to learn as much as I can from this as well.
That's a really good question. So Stripe is kind of the gold standard for developer satisfaction when it comes to integration. So any other payment provider is not as easy to integrate than Stripe. So off the offset, most of our team would rather work with Stripe than a WorldPay or something like that. And that's because the documentation is world class. The APIs are very solid, and it's just well put. It's a developer's product. From a consumer point of view, it's incredibly simple to use. The dashboards are great. The data you get is really good. It's fairly cost effective for people to integrate. For instance, if you have Shopify, or you're building out any kind of payment flow, Stripe is very cost effective to put in. It's probably slightly more, the payment fees are probably slightly higher than if you go through someone like WorldPay or kind of one of the more traditional payment gateways. But the benefit is you have kind of a 21st century tech stack, not something that was made when abacuses were still around.
I mean, one of the articles I was reading about Stripe in the other day was if Stripe was launched at the same time as things like WorldPay and well, it's a Payo now. It used to be Sage, wasn't it? But
Yeah.
Payo and that sort of stuff, that they would control probably more about 90% of the market rather than the market share that they have, just because of how much more accessible it is as a product, how much simpler it is, how much stronger it is as an all-round provider. It's more that they're sort of new kids on. Well, they're not new kids on the block. They've been around for a while now, but like when
they're not legacy.
they're not
like
that's a great word.
Yeah.
So from a legacy perspective. Yeah. So that's why we use it. Is essentially it's just so much stronger for our developers to get their fingers into, work with, and actually tie into what our clients are wanting. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Spot on. And their range of products are really great, whether you want to add on a layer of fraud protection, or if you want to add on a layer of tax computation or reporting, whatever it is, they can kind of add it on. Gotcha. And a lot of the stuff we do at Stripe is self-service, but we do have a fairly good relationship with Stripe because we work with them so much. So we've got a few great contacts there that can help get us onto certain programs and whatnot. And we go up to their office in London and do those kind of things too. So yeah, nice. We've got a good relationship with Stripe.
So our clients, when our clients require a sort of payment processing element to their site, we've just done one with one of our clients as well, actually, with that. When do we move from the standard sort of Stripe management accounts into Stripe Connect? When do we make that change?
Great question. So Stripe standard payments is going to be used for when you have a buyer and a seller, and money moves from the buyer to the seller. Really simple. Stripe Connect has a few different ways of working, but the main and the simplest way of explaining is you have a buyer, you have a like a middle person, and you have a seller. So the buyer pays, say, £10. The middle person might say take £2, and then the end seller receives £8. So think of things like Etsy or Lyft or Uber or all of these kind of tools where the platform take a fee, they take a percentage, and then they pass the rest of the money on to the seller. That is kind of the simplest way of thinking about it.
So they're essentially using Stripe as the payment processor there. For all of that. So the money just shifts either shifts between and goes to the right parties involved in that relationship.
Yeah, correct. So we have what's called the kind of the payment, the initial payment, and then we have the payout. So the pay in is money going from buyer to somewhere, and then the payout is going from somewhere to somewhere, and that's kind of the transaction of a Stripe Connect transaction. And there's lots of different configurations you could have. You could have the seller in the middle, and then you could have the fee going off. There's lots of different configurations you can have, but the most obvious one is when you think about something like Etsy or a marketplace or Kickstarter or ASOS or Deliveroo. Deliveroo is a great example, right? Deliveroo are going to take a percentage of every order that you make, but most of the money is going to the shop, the takeaway restaurant, whatever it is. So this process handles that transaction automatically.
Well, that makes sense. So in terms of using Stripe Connect for something like Deliveroo or a product like Etsy or a marketplace like that kind of makes sense. But obviously they are tailored marketplaces. We're talking about communities and things like that.
Yep.
Why would Stripe Connect be an option for a community? Like, why would a community use it?
Yeah, good question. So I would argue that a marketplace is a community. We've built a marketplace. It very much has a community built around it. The idea that your community members can then sell and become literally more invested in what's going on. At my time at Startup Grind in California, they had a guy from a software that I can't remember the name of, but essentially it was like a live video shopping app. Mm-hmm. So it was, imagine QVC, but for the 21st century. And he was explaining how they are shifting serious amounts of money through the platform. And they're obviously taking a cut and the seller's receiving the majority of it. But they're building a real community around both the sellers, training them, helping them to become, great on stage, on video, etc., but also around the buyers and kind of building this incredible community. And they're finding actually the amount of time people spend watching a seller kind of show products and stuff is incredible because they have so much passion around Pokemon cards or whatever, or Lego or whatever it is. So that was a whole thing. But also just there's other kind of interesting use cases you could make. So for instance, let's say you're running a community around learning, and Jacob, you came onto our platform, onto our community, and you were building out a course, right? We could allow you to sell your course as part of our community. The majority of the money would go to you, but we take a 10% cut, those sorts of things. Or maybe you refer somebody into the community, and actually for referring them in, we're going to send you $10. Well, rather than sending that off to finance and having them manually process it, we can automate those kind of things through Stripe Connect.
Gotcha. So it just makes things so much easier to have all encompassing just in a single kind of space, but then within however these sellers might be getting involved in the community types you're running. I suppose it depends on that aspect of your community, but oh, cool, great. Okay, so it a lot of benefits around Stripe Connect. When we
it definitely automates a lot of what used to be very manual processes. We can now automate through technology.
Are there things that we need to be aware of? Are there like some disadvantages or considerations that when this is approached as an option, we need to be considerate of?
Of all of the Stripe products that we've used, Stripe Connect is one of the most confusing.
Okay.
We get people call us up all the time because we've got a fairly well-watched video on YouTube about Stripe Connect. And I think it's got like 20,000 views. And folk genuinely just can't get their head around how it works. And we get developers from other agencies calling us, asking us just to explain how the payment flow works. Because it is, the first time you implement it, it's very confusing. You know, you've got a buyer in Barcelona, a seller in the UK. Who's paying tax to who? Where's the VAT going? How do you deal with, like, are you taking a percentage of the shipping cost? There's so much just to think about when you're transferring money around. You know, ultimately in Stripe Connect, you get to choose who is the legal seller of that item. You know, ultimately, if you're just the marketplace, are you going to be the legal seller, or are you just taking a cut from the legal seller? There's so many complications around it. And the documentation, once you understand it, is very good. However, the initial, I now understand what's going on, is very confusing. We also find that there's a few really niche rules that have changed recently. So certain countries can't pay out to certain countries. Again, like I explained, tax is very complicated, and as implementation goes, this is one of the more complicated Stripe products to implement. My advice would be that they have 3 products. So they have Stripe Connect Standard, Stripe Connect Express, Stripe Connect Custom. Stripe Connect Express is kind of the simplest one to implement, and is actually a very simple job to implement, as long as you are in the UK and your buyers and sellers are mostly in the UK. Okay. Then it's a really simple job. It gets a lot more complicated when you move to a standard account and you want custom branding and you want buyers and sellers around the globe.
I see. And then Connect Custom is like just full on off the scale. We want everything.
Stripe Custom would be what is being used by Deliveroo, Depop, Kickstarter, Lyft. You know, they'll have engineers dedicated to that integration.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So in general, just the ease of it, the automation flows and things like that, it's just, you need to ideally work with an expert, is what I'm hearing. When you want to actually then consider this as an option, speak to someone who knows what they're doing, because and can advise it from there. What are Stripe like from a support perspective and walking through this sort of stuff? Are they do they run their own kind of teams to help you with this, or is it much more working with a developer?
So what Stripe will do is, unless you are going to be moving very large quantities of money, 6 figures or more, probably more like 7-8 figures, what they'll do is they'll refer you straight to one of their referred partners. Mm-hmm. So we're on track to become, I think, the UK's first approved partner for Stripe Connect. And they'll basically refer you to us, and we can then help you through that process. Their documentation is good. They've got good videos about it, but it's a lot to get your head around. And realistically, it's a lot easier to do it. You know, we've done quite a few of them now, and it's pretty simple now for Andre to run through it, because he's got the head knowledge around how it works.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. So let's bring this back then to community. Things like that. That's a lot of technical and detailed information about Stripe Connect, which is great. And I think if it sounds like if people got questions about whether they should use Stripe Connect or Standard or Express and things like that, we could to get in touch. I would love to point in the right direction. Things there, but bringing it into community aspect and things like that. How can a marketplace like support a community within this? How can it really help sort of foster that?
Yeah, well, I think it gives an extra level of stickiness to what you're building, right? So say you've built a community around art, okay? So you've built a community around art, you've got this lovely, you might be selling art supplies, you might be, I might have a membership where folk can come on and chat about art, so you're running workshops, all of that stuff. But by adding a marketplace, what you're doing is you're going, we would love you to create content, which essentially is fairly high on the participation ladder. But actually, we've now given you the mechanisms where you can make money through that, and you could turn this into a job if the traffic's right. So not only have you got a place where you're allowing your members to become more engaged and quite loyal to your product because they're essentially making real money from it, but actually you're creating a space where they are financially rewarded for driving traffic to your community. And what I love about marketplaces is if you have a really niche and thriving community around a marketplace, your sellers are doing a lot of your marketing for you because they are invested to be driving traffic to you, and you're taking a cut. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. It seems like such a no-brainer to me that if you're running a community and you can create learning content, or you can create digital content, or even physical goods, and there's an option to run a marketplace, it just makes so much sense to me.
What do you think the impact would then be of, obviously, so often within a community, and again, it always echoes back to that desire of how does a community manager promote the community and things like that, and often it's about having a place of people who are passionate about a certain topic and things like that. Therefore, that's how you want to bring people to the platform, so they are that passion still remains. Bringing in a marketplace can potentially change that opinion sometimes, because it can have the negative effect of, oh, I'm going to join this so I can make more money and sell. So that sort of reduces that community, the engagement aspect, and just has it as, oh, I'm just here to sell. Like, what are your thoughts on making sure that the community can then stay true to itself if it brings in true to itself? Sounds so cliche, but is that kind of consideration?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it would be around approving your sellers, approving what they're selling. You know, we're not talking about, in my head, we're talking about niche marketplaces. That's what I have in my head. We're talking about building the next great Etsy. But also, I think there's some really interesting mechanics you can do with around actually, what if your engagement on the platform was linked to stuff like your listing ratings, and that's your listing rankings and stuff. So actually we have these really engaged folk in the community, and because they're engaged, you have more visibility over their shop. And that's because maybe in, say, the forums, there's a nice little button like view my shop. So the more they're engaged in the forum, the more people are going to click through to their shop. But even just like, you know, on a shop listing, you know, rank, you know, this seller has 4.5 out of stars. They're also super engaged. You know, they're really invested in this community. You know, they really care about pens, or they really care about learning, or cars, or whatever it is. That is really interesting to me. Actually, I recently ordered a garden pergola online, like a garden roof thing. So when it got sunny, we've got some shade in the garden. And trying to find one where the shop looked like they had actually touched it, like actually, made it and not just kind of drop shipped it in, was actually really difficult. Turns out there's a lot of cheap garden furniture online, which looks like absolute rubbish. And then eventually Rachel managed to find one where there was a video of a guy from the shop building it. And I was like, okay, this one is slightly more expensive, but I know that someone from the shop has actually touched it. And I felt almost like this affinity to this thing because I was like, it feels more real. Like there's a human element behind what's being sold here. I know that when I'm moaning around building this thing, this guy has also gone through the same pain points, but it kind of felt more real. So we ended up purchasing that one and it was a good decision. But I feel like having a marketplace and a community touch together, you kind of get that human element behind your shop. And I like that.
I wonder where reviews are becoming less valuable on products now with things like something Amazon's struggling with is the fake reviews behind products, new product launches, bots, or however the reviews might approach the scenario, just driving that trust factor down. So it sounds like a little bit of what you're saying is it massively helps bring the trust factor up if it's more a part of an engaged community. And look, I totally understand that the audience is probably going to be much smaller because you're not doing this through just SEO and trying to raise your store profile online. But the idea of, again, it comes down to that loyalty, kind of like advocates for your brand. Well, your advocates, your trust factor goes up because you're already tied to this community and you've got that connection. And then actually, if you're engaging, it just goes even more. So you actually got some real care, and it comes down to customer service again and that sort of stuff. And from that, just interconnection from everything is just massively heightened in an approach.
I think something which we've chatted about before is it's really important when you're thinking about marketplaces or you're thinking about even just selling a merch range around your community or whatever, like a physical product, whatever it is, PDF download. If you're thinking about monetizing anything, it's got to feel like you, and it's got to be the same quality that you want your community to be. There's no point having a well-moderated, well-run, well-organized community that feels high caliber and then selling a crappy PDF you made on the weekend for £20. It doesn't fit right together. It feels like a cash grab. And I feel like if you're going to do something, it needs to feel like what you're doing. Ultimately, if you're running a kind of a really not low quality, but kind of a really low barrier to entry community where, we don't take moderation particularly seriously and it's all fairly free flowing, then you're going to get away with having lower quality products. But ultimately, if you're talking about high quality products, then you're going to need to have that match.
And also, I'd hope that if the user base is strong and trusting enough, that if someone does buy a low quality product from someone within the community, that can be flagged fairly quickly to the community manager or whoever's managing the marketplace, so then they can get on top of it. I think we got to try and avoid. There seems to be a real hesitation within reporting or things within a community at the moment. There seems to be a hesitation in either kicking that person out or giving them like a disciplinary warning type thing. But actually, it's so important and so valuable to have like a really strong environment where everyone's on the same page and everyone's taking care of things like that. It's just maybe making sure you put those things in place to help cover off when we approach things there as well. So
definitely,
Stripe Connect sounds like an awesome tool, an awesome product then for running and managing marketplaces and how communities can kind of work with that. Are there any other products? Now, I want us to be talking about Stripe more than anything else because that's what we're great at. It's what's easiest. I would prefer our team to always have to use it, and therefore anyone who approaches us use it as well.
Yeah.
Do you know of anything else that works in such a strong way as Stripe that people, when they're making unbiased decisions online in their research, can take consideration of?
There definitely are other ones. I've researched a few of them and I didn't feel confident from any of them.
So no, essentially, Stripe is the one to go for. Can you sum this up, Pete?
So essentially, with Stripe Connect, it is a product of Stripes that allows you to handle both payments in and payments out. Now, you could use that for basically anything you want to. The use case we've been chatting about most today is marketplaces, because that's kind of the obvious solution. But there are plenty of other solutions. It might just be you want to pay out some of your chapters. It could be anything. It could be anything. So yeah, that's basically Stripe Connect. It's pretty technically complicated, but ultimately, once it's set up, it's good to go. And we've used it lots of times, and we know it and we trust it. And I'd recommend it if it's something that you're kind of looking to expand and kind of deepen your and grow your community through a marketplace.
Nice, love it. That's great. A few technical issues there with the video, but that's all right. That's what happens in these sometimes. Nice one. Thanks for that, Pete. That's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing that sum up in the article as well.
Good stuff.
After this, but nice one. Good to chat. Good to chat, fella. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth saying, just before everyone goes, we do summary articles of this on Platforming Community, which is the Substack we also run, which was kind of the precursor to this. So the link for that will be kind of in the show notes in the live description. And if you've got any questions or you want to talk more, just reach out to Jacob or I, and we would always be happy to chat about anything communities and anything platforms. So yeah, we'll see you next week.
Catch you later.